Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Our beloved Shri Swamiji, a few decades back, gave a lovely message to serious sadhaks. Sadhaks are spiritual aspirants, people who aspire for jnana, which means wisdom, people who aspire for freedom, mukti. Swamiji almost gave the grand roadmap to reach that destination of wisdom and freedom. He almost charted a journey towards that goal. He started by saying the first instrument available to us is this physical body. This body is born of food. The body grows because of food, and the body is nourished by food. So the first step a spiritual aspirant needs to consider seriously is, how do I enhance my spiritual journey by regulating my food? Generally, a spiritual aspirant would be very careful about what he or she eats. Generally, food is of three types as per our Sanatana Dharma. One is Rajasic food, Tamasic food, and Sattvic food. A sadhak would focus only on Sattvic foods. And even Sattvic foods, a spiritual aspirant need to take in a very continental way. Only the amount which is required for the proper functioning of the body, and the quality of food which is conducive to our spiritual journey is only partaken. And the amount of food is also not taken so much little or so much more. It is taken in the right quantity, optimal quantity. And even that food is taken in a proper, periodic and a regular manner. Remember, if we think that we are going to be very tight in our diet and not eat in time, over time we may actually end up with stomach-related issues like ulcer and stuff like that. It may actually become impediment to our own sadhana of, say, meditation or bhajana, etc. So right time, right quantity, right food in the right amount. And even that food, a spiritual aspirant, our Swamiji says, would offer first to Bhagavan and take it as a sacrament or prasadam. And as a sadhak progresses in the path of spirituality, as Bhagavan himself says in the 11th canto, Bhagavan does a lot of things which are very conducive for this spiritual journey, sadhana. Over time, the body gets a little mature, if I can use the term. It's called Siddha Sariram. It becomes very spiritual. And so we may actually, over time, reduce the quantum of food also and yet retain the same energy and the proper functioning of the various parts of the body. This is technique called Siddha Sariram. So over time, a sadhaka even reduces the amount of food, and that would be very intuitive for the sadhaka, so that the growth or the progress towards the spiritual growth is unimpeded. So the first step, our Swamiji said, is to actually give a little more care and focus and attention on what we eat and drink. Food is the first level because our body, physical body, is sustained by food, and a physical body needs to be purified first. The next aspect we need to focus on is our breath. The vital forces or the vital energy in the body which makes everything function is actually born of breath, breathing. It sustains in breath and it is nourished by breath. So the next step or the next aspect a sadhaka needs to focus on is the breath. And the first steps is doing what is called as a Nadi Shuddhi. Nadi Shuddhi is a special way of breathing which we need to learn from an adept guru who teaches how to do Nadi Shuddhi, which actually purifies the various vital energy pathways in the body. It's called Nadis. Once Nadi Shuddhi is done, slowly a sadhaka moves towards what is called as Kumbhaka. Kumbhaka means retaining the breath at the proper spiritual center. That's called Kumbhaka. Kumbhaka means retaining the breath inside our body. And a little more technical aspect, it is retained in one spiritual center of the body. It's a guru would teach you what it is. And as we slowly control our breath, we start retaining the breath called Kumbhakam. And the amount of time we take to retain the breath shows the sign of our progress in our dhyana or yoga. Normally we can retain it for 25 to 30 seconds. There are people who can retain longer. And the more we retain the breath, more we can progress in the path of sadhana. Over time, they reduce the number of breaths also. And they are able to have the same vital energy inside by reduced number of breaths over time and by retaining a simple intake of breath inside the body for an extended period of time. So first food, then breath. And the third most important aspect, which is the most subtlest aspect which needs regulation, is our mind. The mind is born of thoughts. The mind grows by thoughts. And the mind is nourished, nurtured by thoughts. And so the next level after controlling food, which is the first stage which prepares the sadhaka, and the intermediate stage, which is a bridge between the physical body and the subtle mind, is the breath. And after taking care of the breath comes the regulation of mind, which is the most important, and other two are preparations for this. So a sadhaka needs to start regulating the quality of thoughts, which means a sadhaka or a spiritual aspirant needs to focus on channelizing thoughts towards divinity, Bhagavan, God, and reducing the thoughts which are not spiritual in nature. How do we do that? First of all, by avoiding contact with objects which can trigger such thoughts, and by actually embracing circumstances and objects which can trigger divine thoughts. For example, if you are in satsang, as we saw in the earlier episode, more quality thoughts towards divinity are triggered. If we are in a company of people who are more used to sensory pleasures, our company with them would only trigger such types of thoughts. So the quality of the thoughts need to be channelized, and a spiritual aspirant slowly progresses towards reducing the number of thoughts. How does a spiritual aspirant do that? This is purely a path of jnana yoga. When we spend more and more time in satsanga, more and more thoughts are diverted towards Bhagavan. And as we start observing the thoughts, we can reduce the number of thoughts. When we pay attention to thoughts, we can reduce the number of thoughts. Just like how a Siddha Sarira can sustain with almost barely minimum food, and how a Siddha can sustain with barely minimum breathing, this mind and normal functions of the mind and the body, etc., when we progress spiritually, can sustain with minimum thoughts. And the grand finale is absolutely the thoughts cease, cessation of thoughts. That's when that which we truly are, that consciousness shines forth, and we are free from conditioning of our past, free from conditioning of karma and the rest. And that is the state of mukti, that is the state of freedom. Our Sri Swamiji beautifully delineated these three beautiful milestones in this journey, or a spiritual journey of a spiritual being, to finally find the destination of mukti or jnana. Radhe Radhe.